Good evening, councillors. Good evening, staff members, and our guests tonight. Welcome. Acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge the Ngadjuri and Nagana people, the traditional custodians of the land and waters of the Light Regional Council area. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. We have an apologies from Councillor Ellison. Do we have any further apologies? If not, we have no leave of absence. We are here tonight, of course, as a special meeting of council to discuss the Have Your Say program, so we can start to make some decisions and get this rolling. We got a great response, as we're all aware, and the committee, I'm sure, are really anxious to get the outcomes of their applications. So hopefully tonight we can gather around and discuss these projects with the spreadsheets that we've been provided with, and plus the information that we've had. And what I'd suggest that we do in order to do that is we suspend our standing orders for an hour, and we can talk far more informally in that respect. CEO Richard has volunteered to facilitate the meeting tonight so that we can get some discussion going and so forth. So I guess to get things going, would someone like to move that we suspend standing orders? Councillor Dean, Councillor Annette, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried. So we can have an informal discussion. We want to, the rules, I guess, are pretty broad, as long as we're showing respect to each other and understand people aren't always going to have the same opinion, and we can work through that. So, Richard, where would you like to work from? Councillor Collin?
Yeah, can I just ask a question? It's not relating to what we're discussing tonight. So we're having a special meeting, but
yep.
I'm just wondering, so at the last meeting there was a motion moved and carried to say we have a workshop. So is that now been rescinded? Like, how does that work? I can't. Well, it's not a workshop, is it?
Yes.
Well, technically speaking, it is.
Yes,
Yes.
it's a special meeting.
We can call it what we like. In the old days, there were workshops, then they went to gatherings. Now they've gone back to a council discussion, basically. So if you want to call it a workshop, we can.
So
it doesn't make any difference. The rules are
going to be brought back at the September ordinary meeting. So now it won't be brought back to then. This will be brought back today. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. When we've reached a conclusion at the end that we've either had enough, we want to talk about this on another occasion. In other words, expand on that. We can. Otherwise, when we get to that 1 hour, we can resolve to go a little longer if we wish.
Because it has caused a bit of confusion with quite a few elected members, and I did see there was.
They're all here, councillor.
No, but there was email correspondence about. So I'm just trying to narrow it down. I'm just trying to work out how you can have a motion and then just actually do something different. I just can't see.
We haven't done anything different except I've called, and the mayor can, a special meeting of council simply so we can get a resolution tonight if council so desires. We had a workshop, that's it. We can't do that till the next council meeting.
What I'm asking you, Bill, is what happens to this motion that was moved, seconded and carried? Does that motion now, do you rescind it? Or does it just get null and void? Or what? I don't understand. I'm just asking what happens to that motion.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Collin. Where it would be that the motion itself would stand, and all of the actions within that motion will still be carried out. So the workshop component can be now carried out in this suspended, or in this part of the meeting where the normal meeting procedures have been suspended. So for the purposes of this, while we won't necessarily call it a workshop, we are workshopping the program that was put in front of us. In terms of September, should the council tonight get to a point where we are able to compile a recommendation, move second and pass the recommendation, then the minutes of this would be going to the council for adoption. So there will be the reports going to the council meeting.
Thanks, Richard. Anything further on that, councillor Collins?
I know what you're doing, but I just can't see how you can pass a motion and then ignore it.
We
And
haven't
then
ignored it.
we're doing something different. That wasn't that motion. We're doing something different than that motion.
We're doing something in addition to it,
No, we're not.
having a special meeting to.
We're doing something
conduct
different than that motion. That motion was passed. That's what I'm saying. How do you legally? Because I was reading the act. It doesn't say anything about the act. If you call a special meeting, that's fine. But
Yeah.
the workshop still should stand because it's a motion that was passed. I'm just,
Well, we're conducting the workshop. That's exactly what
you're not, I don't think you understand what I'm saying legally, Bill. But that's, anyway.
We've suspended standing orders, so we're in workshop mode, if you want to call it that. Does it matter? Let's move on. Richard, might introduce Richard now to lay down the rules for tonight and how we're going to conduct this to provide everyone with the opportunity to have a say.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. I'm not sure about rules and me laying them down, but I thought I'd just sort of touch on how we've got to being here tonight and the report and the recommendation, which you can see is not a full recommendation. It is important to understand that right at this point in time, or since the August meeting, there's been no further analysis of the projects at all that have been done by staff. In fact, the staff stand by the recommendation or the draft, well, I shouldn't say the draft, the recommendation that was included in the August meeting. We think that recommendation was a very good, strong recommendation. And I think that in terms of the parameters that we put around the way in which the money would be spent, we think was pretty close. That said, we recognise that not everyone would share the view that management put forward, and that in having a recommendation which had so many components, it's very difficult to make amendments to that recommendation under normal meeting procedures. So this tonight gives us a really good opportunity to re-look at that recommendation and actually determine whether we are substantially happy with it, whether there are more IDs or project IDs that we want to bring into it, whether there are project IDs we want to take out of it. But probably one thing that I would say is that undertaking a review process of what we've learned to date, whilst we're still assessing, is probably not the appropriate thing to do. So we've put some really good criteria around the projects that we should adopt. And I think if we're not going to adopt, or if we're going to bring other projects in, we should really closely look at that criteria that we are, as best we can, consistently applying through all the projects. I think our time will come where we do look at this and say this was either a success or a failure, and I use that word failure very loosely, to say what could we do better in the future. And some of those learnings, I think, will come around project criteria, project values, total project funding that we would apply here. And I think as we go through our strategic planning process, our IAMP and general budget development for future years, I think we're going to really get a feel for whether, having the sort of funding that we had in this program is going to be sustainable for the longer term. And equally, whether some of the amount of money that we put into it is a good strategic use of money, particularly around some of our asset planning. It led me to think about my involvement in some other committees that I'm on, and one is the South Australian Black Spot Consultative Committee, and the other one is the Local Government Transport Advisory Panel. And both of these panels are statewide grant funding programs. The Local Government Transport Advisory Panel is around about, I think, $17 million in grant funding this year, of which our council was fortunate to get about $1.4 million of. And the Black Spot Panel, which is a much smaller component that comes to South Australia, of about $5 to $6 million per year. What is important about both of those is that the application process is essentially the same, where organisations, generally councils and state government agencies, are applying for money, and they're applying through an administration. And the administration will take and digest that information, and it will compile it in such a way that decision-making bodies can actually assess and look at to determine the processes that have been through to actually make sure that their approval of that money is consistent with the funding guidelines. As a rule, they don't go down to the level of scrutinising and having their say and pulling a project in or out. So I think in terms of the way in which we have our conversations tonight, we should be reflecting on the processes that we've gone through, because it will be the processes that we are criticised on. It'll be the processes that we can better defend, rather than being able to defend our decisions to include a project or not, based sometimes on good reason, but the reasons may not be absolutely defendable. So with that, I think the way in which I'd like to progress this tonight is to reflect on what our recommended projects were to the August meeting, and look at that as the baseline of what we should be approving tonight. And then either removing or adding those projects, rather than looking at the full list of projects and saying, do we need to discuss or debate them? With that said, I think if we've each got a range of project IDs, that we would be individually prepared to say, I've got some concerns with these 5 or whatever it be, and then we get to a point where we can actually look at it and go, let's discuss these 15, let's discuss these 20, let's have a think about how that works. We've got all the staff around the table tonight. We've got Lorinda and Pepper here also, who are going to be able to participate, and then we can just have that have that sort of strong discussion. Hopefully what we can do via a show of hands in a majority way, as we discuss those projects, which, as I say, we should discuss by exception, we can show of hands, add them into our recommendation, and look, hopefully later tonight we could get to a point where we do have a recommendation. That's my simplistic view. You may have a very different view of how it would be, but I think that that is going to enable us to move forward. So if we do have people who'd be prepared to sort of say, I've got a range of ID numbers, as I say, to either come in, out, I would, be worthwhile us bringing those forward. Councillor Lynette?
Can I ask you a question? Why didn't we set parameters for the people that were to apply for this? Why didn't we set parameters? We didn't set any parameters. They didn't have a clue how much they could apply for, and some of them were quite willy-nilly and not right. Did you set parameters with your agenda item that you're proposing?
Yes, we did. Yeah. Look, I think one thing's for sure is that this being very new, we weren't sure what we were going to get. I think it would be fair to say that we would all be very pleased with what we did get in terms of the amount of projects. I think it shows that Sometimes if there's a little bit of money involved, we can draw the community out and get them a little bit more involved in the process, which I think was perfect. But once we got that information or got those projects, you just see how different they all are. So you've got to put some parameters around it. And some of those parameters were around what we as an administration are capable of delivering. We didn't know whether these projects would be what I call community projects, where we are handing the money over to a community organisation. But it's very clear that we're going to have projects that the council will now, or the administration will need to deliver. So we had to put some parameters around that. And I think in terms of the report, I think we've probably captured that quite well in terms of how that's done.
Through the chair, but you didn't, the thing is that the public didn't know when they, like, Freeling Christmas party, put in for $30,000, which is absolutely ridiculous. But if they had a parameter that they could know up to a certain amount of money that they could apply for, it would have been a lot easier. We wouldn't have got all this. We wouldn't have got it like this.
Yeah.
I think next year we need to have a parameter for the public.
Don't disagree. We would certainly, but if this becomes an ongoing funding program for our council, without a doubt, there would be much more rigour in the development of the program rather than the assessment of the program. Councillor Michael.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Richard. I guess just, and thanks to Councillor Lynette for kicking off the discussion. Look, I think I agree. When I moved this motion at the meeting, the concept, there was a concept that I guess I had in mind, and it would have benefited from some more specific drafting, I think, in the motion that sort of gave some guideposts around perhaps what the elected body ultimately supported to do. I guess just to explain what that concept was without being too prescriptive, and I'll come back to some of the benefits of having and disadvantages, I guess, of having not been so prescriptive to begin with, was relatively small but meaningful and tangible projects that were or are accessible to a broad cross section of the community. I think I made the comment at the meeting that wouldn't it be great if this resulted in some project at Wasley's and something at Greenock and something at Hewitt and Roseworthy, and a broad spend across the community that gave the greatest benefit with what we had available to us, and probably equally between wards. I would probably add as an adjunct to that, to the best of our ability. That said, we've received 77 submissions from the community, the total of $14 million worth of projects. I think the amount that we indicated, I think, which was in the media release that the CEO put out in the mayor, probably should have sent a signal of what was available. It was, wasn't $750,000 or as an example. I guess in terms of how we sort of take this forward, in my view, I sort of agreed, with Richard's suggestions to a point where, there seems to me to be some things that are pretty straightforward here or obvious. I'm mindful that, we've undertaken a consultation process with the community, and that this should be a community-driven initiative. But that said, we can't fund everything because of the number of and value of submissions that we've received, and the motion always contemplated that ultimately it would be the council or the elected body that would do its best to sort between those priorities. Probably the two other points I would make that probably weren't clear at the time was around the funding, not necessarily needing to be spent this financial year. I think I clarified that with the CEO at the previous meeting that, it might be possible for some of the larger projects to have a seed funding this year that leads to something next year. I think some of the feedback that we've received will be valuable for the strategic planning that we go into over the next couple of months as we heading to the IAMP as an example. There's some big ideas out there that I think by necessity and should fit in that process. Probably the other thing I wanted to revisit, not just apart from the list of the recommendations that, you know, I'm grateful to the staff. I think have done a great job with, without those guideposts that I've talked about, to put together the recommendation, was how much contingency should be set aside, in addition to the amounts that are proposed to be funded. 30% to me, you know, feels a little comfortable. You know, and that would liberate some of the funding for some additional projects to fall into this recommendation. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor.
Thank you. Before I get to Councillor Dean, I might just make a comment about that. I'm not overly concerned at the moment in a budget sense of what was put up, and the reason that I say that is in November will be the first budget review of council, and should this program be adopted, we will be able to start bringing everything to the council as to all the changes that occur from time to time, and we will have a much better understanding of our financial position at that point, including projects that we've been able to actually undertake some further assessment as we go on whether they're going to be on track, off track, or whatever. And I would suspect that when we get to that point, I think our projected surplus is likely to actually increase and not decrease. So I believe that over the course of the coming months, it is most likely that councillors would be in a position where they may be asking for more projects to actually come on board. So, I'm not dismissing the comment about the contingency, but I'm probably saying I think there's a little bit of work for us to do so early on, but I'm quite positive from that point of view. Councillor Dean?
Just on the point of the open-ended nature of the what went out to the community, I think given that this was the first time we've done this, that the open-ended nature was actually a plus, because we got from the community a pretty broad spread of what they thought the community needed. And although that made it hard to select projects to fund because the amount was very high, it gave us things that we needed to consider for future funding. Because it's my view that we've passed $392,000 budget, so we can't really commit ourselves to more than that. So if we have a project that's worth, say, $500,000, and we commit to some seed funding which commits us to the whole 500,000, we can't do that, in my view, without considering as part of the long-term financial plan its implications there, as part of the strategic plan and so on. And so therefore, I actually support quite strongly the criteria that you established, because what that says, these are shovel-ready projects we can do now. We've got the funding to do it. We said we're going to spend it this year, so we're going to spend it this year as much as we can. Some will carry over, and we shouldn't be too fussed about that, but there should be a commitment to spend the money now. But there also was, and I think my reading of that report, where you've got things like alternative funding, consider it as a business plan, consider it as part of the strategic plan. What we are doing by saying that is committing ourselves to looking at those projects in the context of the overall budget now and into the future. Because if we don't do that, we're not fiscally responsible. So we ask people what they want. We deliver the ones that we can easily deliver because they're already ready, and the other ones that are not on the back burner, but they require more work and certainly more assessment, and that's given us a direction to go forward, which we might not have got if we had a very narrowly focused criteria. So they'd only ask up for 15 grand and 20 grand or something like that. Mm. So I actually think what happened is a plus, not a minus.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. I'm not seeing any other red buttons, so councillor Collins.
Management's organised. The only thing, what I'd like to make that is that it was 2% that was meant to be taken off the budget. I find that we had discussions in November last year about putting money aside for events. And I was of the understanding that we had already had put money aside for events in the budget. It just seems to me that maybe we're just moving money that was already allocated in the budget into this. So then the 2% actually doesn't come off. So I'm a little bit worried that, you know, something that was already out, the money was already allocated has been put into this. I also think that when we moved the motion, we didn't give management enough direction in what we wanted, and I think that's why we're here tonight. If we'd written a better motion, maybe, or if we had a workshop immediately after the motion was passed, because I think a lot of these things haven't really been thought about well enough. And like I'm quite a strong believer we shouldn't be giving money to something like a business group. I just think that should be economic development or something like that. I think that the way I also look at these type of grants is that you give it to the community. They take the money, they ask for a certain amount, you give them as much as we can afford, and they go and spend it. If they don't have enough, they're going to have to find it somewhere else. And I know you've been a member of a couple of community events which have or community groups that have got funding like this. If you do go over budget, you go and tap someone else, or you go and find it. You're just going to volunteer to help. So I just think, my opinion is, we give them the money, and then they determine what they do with it, and hopefully they do a good job. If they don't, well, they don't get any money next year. That's pretty well how I think it. And keep it more simple and leave it to the groups who get the money.
Thank you, councillor Collin. And look, what I'll say is this: that you're quite right. $392,000. If it doesn't get spent, it's council's money. If there's a community group, and the Christmas parties are great examples of they need more money to deliver the standard of events that they have in the past, which notably they didn't last year, or one of them didn't last year, but they want to provide a high standard of events. We need to provide them more money. It won't appear magically. It comes from council's money. Whether it is through this program, you know, to a KBA as an example, or whether it's through an existing program through the Economic Development Department, it is council's money. We're not finding new money. We're finding better ways to spend our money. What this has highlighted is that some of our other programs either aren't funded to the levels that they are, or our existing policies aren't to the level, and Lorinda could probably talk more about that in terms of how much money is available at certain grant fundings, and maybe that isn't keeping pace with the requirements that the communities need. It's all council's money. We're not generating any additional money this year. We've raised our rates already, and we've gone to the community. We've got that money. How we now best spend it for the benefit of all our community is now the decisions that we've got. So if we spend all of that money through this program, fantastic. If we don't spend the money through this program, there'll be a surplus. And that surplus can therefore be applied to when community groups, and whether it's the Freeling Christmas party or the Kapunda one or the Greenock Christmas party, we will need to ask ourselves the question, do we want to invest in those events for our community? And I think the overwhelming answer to that would be yes. So if it's funded through this year, but then through our long-term financial plan process, we go, hang on a tick, we don't want to fund it through this next year. We actually want to fund it through an ongoing allocation let's get it into our long-term financial plan. So there's plenty of other ways that we can skin the cat. Councillor Michael first.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So just to clarify that though, so because as I recall, it was quite early term, we did provide, or the council, sorry, provided some support to Police Kapunda from memory. But is it the case that council budgets for those sorts of events separately or already as part of its annual budget? Because I can't recall line items, although we did have the benefit of them eventually. Because to me, although I accept what you're saying, if those are funded as part of this, they're going to be funded anyway. So then this becomes less than what it would otherwise have been, because the allocation for, say, Christmas parties in different localities would have come out of some other provision within the budget.
I just give me a nod on this, but I think $5,000 is the maximum for a regional event.
Come over. Yeah. The microphone, you know that. Okay, so currently for this financial year, for event sponsorship, we have a budget of $15,000, plus there's an extra little bucket of $4,000 for Christmas specific events. So that makes $19,000 for all events across, and there's 2 rounds held, for these grants. And then if I look at community development grant program, that has an annual budget of $10,000. So if I give you, with the current round 1 closed on the 25th of August, because I needed to get it out there so that we didn't disadvantage some groups. I got 7 applications in round 1 with a total asking of $10,025. 2 of those applications have had the same submission in ward and community projects, but weren't sure whether it would be funded or not. For event sponsorship, I got 11 applications seeking a total of $42,500. 4 of those applications totaling $17,000 were also ward and community project submissions that weren't sure that they might get funded. So if that helps.
So I think what that highlighted there, that there was still a shortfall. There's still a shortfall in our current budgeted programs. And my apologies, I think Councillor Lynette, I think you had your microphone on first.
Right. How can we increase event sponsorship? How can we increase that amount?
Might just deflect to Kyron if I can.
Yeah, I guess, the simple way is just throw more budget at it. That's one way. We are going through the process of drafting an event strategy to bring to council. So that's still going through some internal testing, I suppose, as to what we think the council would support for the range of events that occur in our region. There could be different ways to get community outcomes through events. And I'll just use Christmas street parties as one event type, whereby some of the cost escalation around those events are around traffic management and the cost escalation, and DIT's different approach to traffic management in more recent years. So those costs have increased significantly. And so an approach that the council could take is to provide traffic management services in kind, so budget separately for that, and remove that as a barrier for event organisers to try and fund themselves or even indeed manage it. So that's one way of doing it that we might put into an event strategy as part of getting some community outcomes, but through a slightly different means. As an example, but you probably once again might want to put some parameters around that, so that you're not necessarily looking to fund in-kind traffic management for every single event that comes to us. So yeah, that's something we can work through.
Through the chair, we're not allowed to use our staff like we always have to set up road closures. I understand. Is that correct? We can't, staff always used to just do that. Now, roads are different, but they have to have a contractor, don't they? Do it.
I might defer to Megan to respond to that with the outside team.
Through the chair, staff can do some road closures. However, staff do get paid for that road closure work that they do. We can and still do assist where we can.
Through the chair, I had a phone call from a lady from the Freeling Street Party last night, and she said that they've been told that it will cost $5,000 to set up road closures. Is that correct or not?
Sounds about right. Yes.
Even if we were able to use our staff. Yeah, I couldn't understand the $15,000 cost, and she was asking me about this meeting tonight.
Just through you, Richard, councillors, I think we're maybe getting off the topic a little bit, but we seem to be assessing the program itself rather than assessing the projects that we're here to assess tonight. Maybe could we get back on track a little bit?
Thank you, Mayor Bill. I'm going to go with Fabio. You haven't spoken yet, so.
Yeah,
Sorry, councillor Fabio.
thank you. And through the chair, if we can just finalise, I'd like to sort of paraphrase this and put an end to this backwards forwards discussion about the Christmas street party. If I refer back to the minutes of the meeting held, the ordinary council meeting on 13th of December last year, the motion that myself moved and councillor Dean seconded was that council give due consideration to the maximum grant of $2,000 already provided by it and the substantial volunteer investment in activating Kapunda Main Street Party and entrances through the Kapunda Street Party Committee, allocates up to $2,000 in funding from the ward project's operating budget as a reimbursement for actual costs incurred to deliver Christmas activities such as dressing and undressing Map the Minor, road closures, etc., contribution towards electricity for the street, for the tree, and other incidental costs. As far as I'm aware, that was actually reimbursed back to that committee as of last year. So as far as going forward, it was about consideration for funding. There was actually no commitment by council at that stage to fund any specific fund. So to your point, Councillor Michael, the amount was not discussed. It was purely a reactive reimbursement of funds for money already spent, and going forward was a clean slate for consideration. And I'm, as a mover of that motion, I was very happy with that outcome. So yeah.
Thank you, councillor Fabio. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, fondly. With regard to the street parties, we had a discussion during our strategy committee, I think it was, about, as I think Councillor Cole mentioned, about increasing the funding to those sort of events. As far as I'm aware, nothing come of that in terms of a formal recommendation, and we didn't actually get the event strategy completed, so it wasn't in that. The consequence of which was the funding that's provided was inadequate, and that's what we're trying to address. So the budget's not there. But the same thing can be said of just lots of the other things that we've got submissions about. But basically, what people are saying is we need money for this. The money is not in the budget currently, other than in this way. And if you want to be technical, I suppose you could say every single item that people ask for belongs to some department's budget, but it wasn't budgeted there. So we're using this opportunity to do things that people want that we haven't budgeted for. in the formal sense, that we've got a sort of a bit of a catch-all with this money.
Yep.
And that applies to people like the KPA, for example. I don't support Colin's view about that. I don't know why they're singled out from other groups. They are just as worthy of funding consideration, in my view. So I think, so saying it should be funded from a department is fine, it should, but it hasn't been. People have asked for it, so this year we've got a mechanism by which we can do it. So I think the argument about whether we should fund it here or here is irrelevant. It wasn't. So it's not there to give out. Therefore, we have to fund it this way or not at all for this year.
Thank you, councillor Dean. Councillor Bill?
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you initially think that party thing is a lot of money. It probably is a lot of money, but yeah, it's a way of funding it. So I don't have any problems with that. I agree with Councillor Colin about Kapunda Advance, Business Advance, particularly in awards things for $15,000, a pretty generous award. So I would recommend removing 70A and 70C, but I would also like to include the two bus shelters, Wasleys and Freedom. Now they're a capital expense, or whether that's why they're not on the list, but that's that would seem a reasonable thing. They'd also put a bit more money away from Kapunda into the other regions. They're $15,000 each. So my feeling is remove the Kapunda business alliance and put those two in. You know, we've got the flagpole issue and the filtered water issue, but you know, they're not great amounts of money, and they might be long-term flag waving issues. So I support them. But
Thank you, councillor Bill. The only thing I would say in relation to the bus shelter is I have had a sneak peek at the audit and risk committee's agenda, which all going well, will head out tomorrow or Thursday morning. I do note within that there is carry forward proposed within the carry forward from the 2022-2023 year of work that wasn't completed, and I think our aim would be to deliver those works, those bus shelters through that program. So again, I genuinely say it, there's only one budget for council, so we can either bring it forward, and if we don't bring that money forward, it'll just, you know, retire debt or so. But either way, but I would just say that is definitely included as a project. Megan is nodding behind you there, so she's right on top of that. But councillor Bill, I'll take it they're your withdrawals and inclusions. And I'm happy to do this in a strategic manner if Michael wants to go next at all, or if we want to go to the other side and we can go back and forth. Councillor Colin, you've got a light on.
The only thing I'd like to mention, also going on to what Bill said, how his ward wasn't really worthy of too much, was it? So we the point I'm making is, if we're going to make criteria, do we actually make it, you know, does every ward get a bit? Like, is it, you know, 30, like, cut it to thirds, or you just go on merit? Because I know it's, I know the better projects maybe were in Kapunda or in the Dutton ward. Like, there's 200 grand has been spent here, like basically 60% of the money.
Yep.
And well, it was three, but there are three councillors for each. For each. So it's done on population really. So,
look. Personally, I'm comfortable with it, and the reason that I'm comfortable with it is that when you bring in the planning work on some of the other projects, I think it will balance itself out. And I don't think that, you know, Muddlawirra Ward, which we agree is probably thin on the smaller community projects, but I think when it, you know, when some of the larger sort of social projects such as playgrounds come into play, and we're confident that we can bring a future report back on how those would be funded. We think it's probably not going to be sort of too far off the mark. So, and I think that's the challenge, is that right at this point in time, the scales aren't level, but I think over the longer period, we get all the right investment. Councillor Lynette, sorry.
I added up Muddler-Wirra, and I had in there the access ramp to the hall, for 5,000. Wasley's Stobie poles, 3,000. Wasley's bus shelter, 3,000. Wasley's Wi-Fi, and the Glider Club, 1,000. And that whole is all Muddler-Wirra have of 15,000. When I went through light, I came up with 43,000 and then nearly 200, as Colin said, with Kapunda. And I do think that we should look at more funding to Muddler-Wirra.
What I can say right at this point in time is the council has under phase 4A of the local roads and community infrastructure program. It has $505,000 that has been committed to council to be spent by the 30th of June 2025. That 505,000 is unallocated at the moment. The types of projects that would be that would fit the criteria are very much some of those projects that would be in the Muddler-Wirra ward. As I say, I think they will balance out. That would be the subject, though, of future reports to council. So that's where, so that there is a further $297,000 or $292,000 in unallocated money that can only be spent on rural roads. That is money that we will bring into that IAMP process, and this is where we would see some of these projects being funded through. So we're confident that we will deliver a significant amount of these community projects. It just may not be through this particular program at this point in time. Is that, you comfortable with that, Councillor Lynette?
Put your mic on, please, Lee.
Sorry. Yes, and the town entry statements. I'm happy with $43,000 worth in Fairland, in Light Ward.
And from what, and just to confirm, I think what I'm hearing from you is that they're all the projects that administration are recommending that we fund.
I've got all.
So you're comfortable, so there's nothing to remove from the list?
Nothing to remove from there at all, no.
And anything to add?
No, I didn't have anything. The street party issue is a different one altogether. And I think when we go, if we can allocate more sponsorship money when that comes up in November, then we can go down that track. Given that Kyron said that we can use in kind, I don't know how much of the road closure could be used, where that could come from in kind. I've got.
I think we need to be careful about using the word in kind. In kind means that people are prepared to do it for nothing.
Yeah.
If it's staff, it needs to be funded, and it is funded through our employee costs, which are already well pressured in my view. But thank you for that. That's really good. Councillor Michael.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Richard, and thanks, Councillor Lynette. So when we released when the media release came out, or this was in the public domain, I engaged with people through social media and through conversation about what they were looking to get out of this, with a focus, I guess, on Muddler-Wirra ward in particular, because I felt that you know, other elected members would seek out their own community members. I agree that, you know, I think I mentioned before, Motherwell Award's a little bit underrepresented in all this. I do understand that some of the projects that were proposed were quite big, or at least the amounts, the potential cost identified was quite big. One project that has a reasonable amount of support in the Hewitt community is some lighting on the shared user path. I understand that wasn't recommended this year because it couldn't necessarily be delivered this year. But having clarified now that there's no need for it to necessarily be complete this year, I'd be pleased to see that considered as part of this initiative. I realise it could be funded separately through other programs or whatever, but given that we specifically asked the community, I asked the community for feedback on this program, they've responded. I think it would be great for the community to see that, you know, the council has responded to their feedback, and then, you know, if it's great, there's $500,000 out there potentially for other initiatives, then maybe this doesn't need to be funded as part of that. In terms of, look, the comments around the events, I'm a great supporter, and if we can support events in the community, but it's not really what I had in mind with this. But I'm just one part of the elected body. So my view is that some of those events should probably fall away, and also the Kapunda Business Alliance activities 70A and 70C.
Councillor Michael, could you just, what was the ID number of the solar light footpath project?
Oh, there's two.
11.
Yeah, there's 11 and 37, which
Were they the same project? Just
yeah.
It was the same project.
It's
Okay,
just a
thank you.
separate potential cost identified. I don't think it's
Okay.
material.
Thank you.
So yeah, one or either of those. And then I'm not sure how we're keeping track of this, but I guess I'm open to discussion on it. But 16, 41, 55, 58, 70A and 70C, I guess I question whether or not they can't be funded through other means, as it's been done historically, which liberates about $69,000 for other initiatives. And then I guess my question stands around the 30% contingency and whether or not we can push that a bit further, and you know, maybe 30 becomes 15%, Richard. And you know, that maybe generates another 50 or something for these. But anyway, I think I've said enough. That's my thinking on it. I think there's some great initiatives here. I think the events are important. I think it can be funded a different way. And I'd be really pleased to see that the Hewitt Shared User Path lighting included, and our commitment to that community recognised, given the threat presented by our neighbouring council.
Thanks very much, Councillor Michael. Councillor Dean.
Thank you. I'm generally happy with what you provided. I do agree with Councillor Michael that the shared use path could well be added in if that's the best way to fund that, but certainly a start should be made on that this year, some way or other. The other one I'll make a plug for is the car park for the senior citizens. That's an urgent and must be done this year. So if it's not done with this project, it's will be done somewhere else. But I think it should be done in this project. With regard to the Kapunda Business Alliance, given the comments made, I think the $15,000 for the business awards, I think, could be funded by KBO another way, e.g. by sponsorship. So that's one that I'll be happy to see go. But the $4,000 for the newsletter, I'd definitely like to see kept in. It's only a small amount of money, but it will make a big difference to a totally volunteer organisation that's doing a lot to meet some of the council's economic development objectives. So it's helping us as well as the community. Other than that, I'm happy.
Thanks very much, Councillor Dean. Might just jump to the end here. Councillor Peter, have you got any projects that you would like to see discussed further, removed, added, or otherwise?
The magazine,
I'm not in favour of that. And the Business Excellence Awards for Kapunda Business Alliance, I can't see that that can be justified. Let's have a look at some others. No, I think probably those two are items which I don't favour. I'll leave it at that.
Lovely stuff. Thank you. Councillor Fabio. So Councillor Fabio, you're comfortable with the recommendation list that was put to the August meeting?
I am, and the reason behind that is that we've, councils are often come under fire for spending money in areas where nobody wanted that money spent, by taking their, I guess, they're taking it in their own hands. For once, we've actually put it into the hands of the community.
Yep.
They've told us what they want. And I think it would be a real slap in the face and would degrade this whole program if we were to now make those decisions that would, favour other things or just strip that power away from the community that we've asked to speak to us and have spoken. So I think based on that, I'll be supporting the recommendations.
Beautiful. Thank you, Councillor Fabio. Councillor Simon, everyone's spoken. It's
yes, I do. First, before I start, I got one question because we were talking about I think it was the Wasleys bus shelter that's in the project, in the program already, that's going to get funded. There's one in Freeling, and it says the same thing. Is that's going to get delivered either which way anyway?
correct. Yep, there is money in the program for bus shelters already, and there is carry forward money that's coming forward to ensure bus shelters are dealt with.
So now come back to the recommendation. I mean, I would just pretty much aligns with what Councillor Michael was saying. So I would remove all this stuff that's, in my opinion, should get funded through a different funding stream, which should be events management or economic development, and that, which is number 16, which is Freeling Christmas Party, Kapunda Christmas Street Party, Kapunda Rife. Oh no, sorry, that's a good one. Sunset at Seppelsfield, Brenner Christmas Festival, Kapunda Business Alliance Activity Funding, and Kapunda Business Alliance Activity Funding Business Excellence Awards. So these are the ones. So the business funding is 70A and 70C. I think that's a completely different discussion. The other ones I would have pulled out is 16, 41, 42, 55, and 58. I'm 100% for funding them, but it just should be funded through something else. So as we heard through Lorinda, I think we got about, I don't know, 20 and 19 plus another, what was it? I think it was $29,000 or something for events, and 19, but I thought there was another 10,000 for community projects or something. That's right. So this, yeah.
Yep.
So there's about $29,000. So maybe we can fund the shortfall through this. I think that'd be a great idea, but I want to make sure that we don't rob Peter to pay Paul sort of thing. So if you got money already set aside to fund these things, we should not use this money to replace that. So that's the recommendation that you have. But I think there's a lot of stuff in here that could be funded. So if I add up these ones that I've, let's say, think they're great, then we end up with something like, I think, 247,000, and so that gives us another 150,000 really to spend. So with this 150,000, because I'm that 30% contingency, I think that I find that a bit of a strange notion. And as Councillor Michael pointed out, I mean, in 10% will probably be good enough. Plus, on top of what you said to start with, we're probably going to have a surplus anyway. So, hey, let's spend the whole lot. And if you need some more, then we will have a surplus. I mean, having surplus doesn't do anyone any good. I think we should just spend the money.
Yep.
So, having said all that, sorry.
I was to say, equally, I will just put it out there. Be cautious of just continually spending capital, because this is operating money. So you can load it up with capital projects, and there's $392,000 that'll go unspent, and you'll just end up with a big surplus. So be cautious about continually just bringing in a lot of capital projects.
And I don't really understand
If our annual budget is raised as an operating budget, and it has a component in there called depreciation, that is your capital component. Your depreciation, because they're all long-term assets, any depreciation will hit a future operating statement, not this one. So the 392,000, our aim is to, as an example, give money to community events. It's an expense. Once you've paid it, it's gone. When you invest in an asset, okay, it comes out of a different, it's a different accounting treatment. So what I'm saying is, if all we're doing is funding lots of assets, we're not actually spending our $392,000. At the end of the year, you're going to end up with this big surplus and go, Richard, why didn't you spend $392,000? And I'm telling you, you're just spending capital money.
Okay. Fair enough.
Which is why some of those bigger capital projects have been, we're wanting to look at them a little bit in a longer term view, because they really have to think about it in the eye. Remember, if you spend $100,000 this year on an asset that lasts 10 years, there's $10,000 depreciation that gets added to next year's budget already. So you can't just look at the budget and think that we're going to get $392,000, because you're already eroding next year's budget. Mayor Bill?
Just a point of order, I suppose. Would someone like to move that we extend our suspend our standing orders for another length of time? We're up to our hour. I need someone to move that. Thanks, Councillor Simon and Councillor Fabio. All those in favour that we move for another hour? Thanks, everybody. Just a clarification too about the allocation of the funding around the different wards. I think Dutton's probably a little bit unfair when we look at Dutton, we think of Kapunda, but we've also got to think in Dutton is Greenock. In Greenock, it was taken up quite a substantial amount from this particular program. So there is a reason probably why that there is so much from Dutton ward in comparison to the other towns, which principally really only have one town, although Light has probably two with Wassleys and Freddie.
Thanks, Mayor Bill. And sorry.
I think there's a few other things that we should have a look at, and one is that Councillor Michael already sort of pointed out is the procured shared use path lighting. I think that's definitely something to look at, and I have had sort of look into it, and there's it says it's not shovel ready, but I sort of doubt that, because I mean I've looked at a company that installs these solar lights. They're $11,000 fully installed with all the bells and whistles per light. I mean, it's a fair price, but they're a really good asset, obviously. So you could literally call them up, and they probably got like 7 or 8 months lead time, and then they can install those things. So I don't think there's much. To me, that would be a shovel-ready project, and I think it's a great thing to do, and it would add a bit more to the Mother Vera ward anyway. Then there's and those playgrounds as well. There's the reason what I can see that they might not be shovel ready, although again, you could probably deliver a playground in about 9 months or something.
I might just interrupt you there. The term shovel ready is not a term that I would see. No. I'm serious. This is not a term I would be applying to council. This is a term that we would apply to the community. Are they ready to do it? If you want to talk our council shovel ready, the answer is you've already approved our annual business plan and budget, and there's already a lot of shovels in the ground. So there is procurement processes in the ground for current projects that we're already working through. We're certainly not saying that our views on shovel ready may be very different, because like I say, we want to make sure the community are ready to do it. When it comes to us doing it as administration, there is a fair bit more work that's required prior to it getting to that shovel ready. So we know that some of the community groups have done quite a bit of work around it, which is really great. From a lot of our stuff, and you've just raised 2 good projects, there's quite a bit of planning that would go into them, and procurement to get them to that point. So
there's some other projects that possibly in the long term are very worthy of funding. I mean, the Greenock CWM has water reuse scheme. I don't know what the exact ramifications are, but to me, that seems like it might be a good project. So I'm wondering, with these bigger projects, is there a way that we could fund some sort of feasibility study or anything like that? Would that be something that we could do instead of, obviously we can't spend $750,000, and I don't even know if this is a feasible project altogether, that you would know better, but would it be possible with these big projects to maybe just, fund the study through this? Instead of saying, I mean, it just says, consider an update to strategic plan. That doesn't really, that doesn't really say much. But if you would say, okay, we say it costs $10,000 to write out a feasibility study, is it possible? What it takes? What are the costs? All this sort of stuff. That might be a good idea. I'm just wondering if that's something that we could do.
We certainly can, and we would look to do that, but we would do it through the CWMS reserve component of our business, because it's the CWMS users that would pay for it rather than council. Slightly different accounting treatment, and we would look at it through that. I think that's our next project for CWMS, as we long-term get rid of Roseworthy. As long-term, we've just upgraded Freeling, as Kapunda is pretty much running quite well. Greenock doesn't have the same system as the other towns, and without a doubt, there is a significant amount of wastewater at Greenock that can be reused, and we've just got to build that business case. But yeah, again, we would say that they will be dealt with separately.
That's happening anyway. So yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. That's awesome. I mean, that's heaps more. So I was wondering about. Again, it's a big program, but it seems really important. So Worsley's Oval Clubroom completion, for example, and I think it comes again, Worsley's Oval accessible sealed areas, and it goes again, Worsley's Oval access, this comes twice. So again, this seems like a big project, but is there anything we could do to start it, or say like, oh, look, again, we do a feasibility study, or write up some quotes or any of that sort of stuff?
Through the chair, with the Worsley's Oval and all the projects that encompass the Worsley's Oval, the club rooms in particular, they were constructed as a shell, and then we fitted out what we could with the money that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So to get the funding for completion, we really can only rely on council funding it direct, through a loan, through our capital program, a business case, or through the LRCI program. But that's something that we have had talks with the community about when we did that project originally. So we did do the studies. Now, it pretty much just needs change rooms. The rest of the building that needs to be completed is the change rooms, toilets, umpires, rooms. Once that's completed, we've had lots of interest from people wanting to use the facility. We have people hiring it now, and I'm sure they would hire a lot more. So we have engaged with the community a lot about that. With the other projects, we do talk through the community, the Worsley's community group, on what needs to be done there. We have actually priced the change rooms to be completed. So we've already got that figure in there, which is why there's a $200,000 price tag to it. That is just for the inside. The extras we haven't priced as yet.
So how can the council support that? I mean, you're saying it's already going on, but is there anything that we as councillors can do to move that forward, or get some funding for it, or what's the best way for us to help that? Because obviously the community wants it. You're saying that the council is already on top of it, which sounds great. So how can we move that forward?
Perhaps the next report that comes out talking about the LRCI program, and the projects that could relate to that funding will probably be the best way at the moment.
Beautiful. Right, so there's a few more that I think that we need, in my opinion, we need to talk about. This one. There's the Freeling, the McLeod's Daughters signage upgrade. I'm not sure why that wasn't happening. It said, because it says it says this customer service request is aligned with medium-term actions within the Lyell Regional Council tourism plan. So the question really is, when is that happening?
Yep, that one's currently in progress now, so should see signage on the ground in the next few months. It's something that's already being taken care of.
Perfect. Good to hear that. Awesome. Then there's another one, the Hewitt, that we got, the Hewitt Share Class comes twice. then something that, and I had a fair few calls actually about that and emails, is about the bus service in to Kapunda. And I understand it's obviously that's a public transport is a state thing and all this sort of stuff. I'm just wondering, because one request that I had, and I think I've written an email to you directly, was just about extending the existing bus services, which are school buses, but which are public buses that everyone is allowed to ride those school buses. Just extend them during the holiday periods. That's what was sort of the question was from those people that I heard, people that, with disabilities, people that are elderly, that can't get anywhere. They need to access pharmacies and hospitals and all this sort of stuff, entertainment, shopping. And so I'm just wondering, because it doesn't have any potential cost in there. And I was just wondering, would it be quite easy to find out how much that would actually cost? Because and that's why hopefully what Lorinda's going to be talking about, where it says suggestion to increase frequency of promotions of existing fortnightly shopping bus service.
So through the chair, so at the moment through our regional public health plan group, and so we're working with the 3 other councils. Community transport is one of the Lighthouse projects. So we're specifically looking at the moment at mapping the existing services. So I guess almost doing not a feasibility study at present, but that is one of the actions in there, is to be looking at what we've currently got offered across the region, so Light region, but also surrounding areas, taking into account community transport. So the transport scheme that we've got through Barossa and Light, so Barossa and Light Transport Scheme, where we get funding through that from the state. We're also looking at the public transport for the area as well. So at the moment, I guess for Kapunda, we've got the school bus / public bus that comes through, and we're looking at, whether we can have discussions with Link SA around that as well. Part of, I guess, their feasibility is that they always have, I guess, one full bus load, at least one direction, because of the school students, and then whether it's feasible for them to be running it outside of that school time. But that's also something that's in there as well, and also taking into account those, we're also looking, which is slightly separate to this, but the walking and cycling trails as well. So around that community transport as a whole. So we are looking at, I guess, what's been mentioned there about whether we can do promotion around what is currently existing, seeing what community need is out there as well, and looking into those sort of feasibility study options as well. So that's on the radar and being looked at. At present, we've already had, I think, 2 or 3 Lighthouse project meetings specifically on community transport there.
That sounds great. Just one question, if I may, if I got you up there, because it in this sheet it doesn't say the potential cost. So I was wondering, is that just because it's really hard to pin that down, or would it be possible to just ask Link SA how much does it cost for 1 week of service, which they wouldn't know, and then you could just sort of extrapolate that 10 extra weeks or whatever, how that would work, because that's during the school holidays.
Yeah, so that's certainly information that we could get from, I guess, Link SA in regards to what they charge people. I guess what they would be looking at is whether the, I guess, passengers that they're going to get are going to cover the costs of what it costs to run the service. So, like I said, when the school kids are on there, that's great. They've got a full sort of probably 40, 50 kids or members of the public on there, and that's done differently to the education department, school system, school bus system. In there as well. But I guess there could be looking and asking Link SA through our Lighthouse project of what does constitute, I guess, an affordable run for them, or a profitable run in there. So that would be looked at as part of that process.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Thanks.
Any further ones there, Councillor Simon?
I mean, there will be a few further ones, yes. So there's a that's a hub room. Reading version of that's the same thing. Then, so that, I mean, this is a real big one, but again, that's a whole question. Can we start something, feasibility study, all that? And I think there were some emails going around about that. It's the Gawler Rosebery bike path between Gawler and Rosebery. I mean, that's a huge.
It's embedded in another project already, so
good to hear. Because I mean, I think it's an important one, obviously, for the future. All that. I think there's one more. This one, for example, there I was the integrated biodiversity corridor on Nitschke Road. I was wondering about that, why that wasn't in there, because I think it says it's not shovel ready, but I actually talked to people that were that would be part part of that, and they reckon it's, so maybe that's the definition on council side, but on the community side, it's definitely shovel ready. That could be delivered immediately, so.
Through the chair, at the time we were going through this particular project, I didn't have enough information to progress that one. Since that time, I have actually received information, so that could have been included. So if that is something you wish to include.
Yeah, I mean,
please
that's
let us know.
definitely something that 25,000, we still got a fair bit of money to spend, so that would be, that's ID number 65. No, I think that's the ones that I would like to add for that. Most of them are just probably a bit too big. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oop, I might go to councillor Michael. He had been waiting a while there. So councillor Michael.
Sorry, thanks, Richard. I just wanted to respond to councillor Fabio's sort of thoughtful comments about the process that we're going through, because I'm conscious of that. And I reflected on that as well. I think fundamentally, although we've invited the community to provide feedback to us, and ultimately the recommendation can't endorse all of those projects, and so the staff have helpfully put together the best recommendation they can. So yeah, I think it's still it is reasonable for the elected body to take a view on that recommendation, as it doesn't obviously recommend every project that that the community put forward. I just wanted to clear up one thing though, the CEO that Richard mentioned, just around the nature of the expenditure, because the penny sort of dropped for me there. So is it right to say that projects of a capital nature that have been recommended here are being dealt with as an operational expense because the funding for the project is going to be delivered by a community group? So it's not an asset held by the council effectively, and so it's not depreciated in future years.
That's correct. Yes. So a great example would be the Gawler River Church ramp as an example. It's a capital item, but we're making a contribution to a third party on their property. Therefore, it's an expense. If that had been on council land, we would capitalise it, and it would come out of a different area within council's budget when you see the reports later in the year.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's
It's a complicated component, but it's just something to be mindful of. Hence why I would be saying that once we get this program approved, we will then work out what's capital, what's operating. We would then bring that revised budget in November back, and you would get a real feel for where you're actually funding everything from, what money is available, and then maybe any other projects that you might like to look at.
I think that makes a lot more sense now. Thank you.
Councillor Fabio.
Yeah, just my comment, and you've just actually touched on it. But to follow on from Councillor Simon's comments about that bus service, 100% supportive of the bus service. I think it's very much needed here. However, I'm mindful of the fact that if we were to implement a bus service, we can't just turn it off at the end of this financial year, because it would be something that would require ongoing OPEX. And hence it's not really a community project as such. It should be funded through other means, possibly a joint effort with Link SA or the Education Department or something like that.
Thank you very much, elected members. So what we've now got, I can't see it, and I know that Corey's busily trying to do it, but we've got the recommendation, and what we're going to throw up onto the screen, I'm hoping, is the projects that effectively we aren't sure on. And they're the ones that we will effectively talk about. And that are unsure on is they could already be in, or we could want to bring them in. Either way, now we'll get that opportunity in a moment. So if we're able to bring those onto the screen.
Excuse me, Richard, is Councillor Collin and Councillor Matt had a say?
Yeah, I think Councillor Collin, you had a few in. I thought you'd already told me the ones you wanted out, and I think Councillor Lynette had already given me all her numbers as well.
I thought we were going that way, that's all.
Oh no, thought it started with Councillor Collin actually. But
What did you
please,
say?
sorry.
Been ignored.
No, thanks for
No,
calling it out.
I haven't really got much to say. I've said a fair bit already, but I think Kapunda's done pretty well. The Memorial Gardens, I do agree with Dean. I think the senior citizens car park should be dealt with. A few of us went to Greenock the other day. They had some good things I think we should be funding. Before I came here tonight, I was a bit, some of these events I wasn't really supportive of, but I think if there's no other funding stream for them, I think we're going to have to support them through this initiative. And one thing I'd like, and the advertisement that was put out actually mentions events, which I didn't realise until a while ago. But I think something that's came very clear to me tonight is that if we're going to do this next year, I think we have to have this workshop before, and will save us all the embarrassment of, well, not embarrassment, but a bit of argy-bargy. We just get it done, because I think everyone's have got good spirit, good intentions here tonight, and I think we should sit down with management and talk about it and have a clear criteria, because I don't think we had a clear enough criteria, and I think it's really, we've wasted time. We're here tonight, so we're wasting time. So I think we just really got to work on it and have a better, clearer idea of what we want to do.
Totally agree. Oh, sorry.
So the only one I'd like to take out is the one I mentioned earlier, which was the business alliance.
The two KBA ones, which are there in green, which we're going to speak about and effectively vote on. I think we've got some probably clear feeling on that. Councillor Dean?
I just want to clarify something, and that is that some statements have been made tonight about people are keen to see something funded this year, but from a different funding stream than this one. Bear in mind that we've set a budget which doesn't have too much slack in it, and we set a budget approving the items that are in the budget. So if we say something needs to be funded from another line, another department or whatever, what we are saying is that we are overturning something we have approved in the actual budget, because we have really put a fair bit of pressure on the budget from what we've done. We've extracted 392,000 from the original one. We've done quite a bit of that sort of thing. And consequently, what we have to do is realise that if we don't fund it from this money and we want to do it this year, something else has got to go.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. I think it's been a fantastic learning process from us all. I think, again, I would say that we've drawn a lot out from the community and what they're looking for. We're about to go through a strategic planning IAMP process. We are just, the next 6 to 10 months is just going to be so much thrown on the table for us all to think about, and it puts us in my view, in a very good position of understanding what our community wants, and this process has done that to some degree, and the next processes are going to do it, in my view, more thoroughly. But Councillor Peter, you look like you've got your finger on the button ready to go there.
Just press. Two items which apply to Light Ward, one which applies council-wide. First one's number 65, which is the integrated biodiversity corridor on Nitschke Road. Now it's rather a large ticket item, but I think it's worthwhile. Number 67, the character preservation workshops, Maranangle and Seppeltsfield. They're not very expensive, $5,000, and I think they're worthwhile. And the third one, which is community engagement improvement council-wide for $10,000, I think is worthwhile.
Thank you. We'll just grab those extra ones and throw them up. The next Councillor Bill.
Well, Yeah, thanks, Richard. I just think I've got this general feeling from the other elected members that you're not giving enough money to the Muntler Weir Award. So I suggest we have you fund a great Christmas party at Wasleys or Hewitt or at Gawler River. Or either we get it through this or we can apply for it through Lorinda. And I'm sure you'd all be happy to support us.
We could have it at your place.
Thank you,
We
councillor
have one
Bill.
already and a couple of extra kegs.
What, look, I think we've got a really good feel from everyone, and that's, and I think we've got to a really good position tonight. It's voting time in my view. I think what we've got at the moment is we've got all the projects and we've extracted the projects from the original recommendation list, and we've got a group here in front of us that are on the screen right now. So
Could I just ask a simple question?
Yep.
Just for clarity's sake, the green versus blue?
So green were ones that are in the recommendation or were in the August recommendation. Blue are ones that we had set aside. And I think what we'll see in a moment is some changes in that respect based on, I think, the conversation we've had. So I'm very comfortable to just go through this one by one, show of hands. This is not, remember, this is not approving it, and I will make, this is not approving it. This is giving staff an indication to add these projects into the list that will go into the recommendation. And when the standing orders are suspended, you will then have another opportunity to debate those matters as part of the moving process, etc. So with that said, and I think we've, well, I was going to say we've got 30 minutes left, but we haven't, it's unlimited tonight, but I think we can move through this quick.
Sorry, Richard. I appreciate we're trying to move the thing forward. I don't, but what is all this set up to if, like noting the 30% conversation we just had, the 90 grand, there's a running total that have been added. How much?
Yeah, this running total is the total of the things that we're going to discuss. Let's just do this, and then we'll get the number, and if the number's good, great. If the number's bad, we'll go, okay.
I'm just saying if it's 390 grand, then
we don't know. That's the beauty of the workshop, but yeah. All right. Thank you.
And Richard, I take it the mayor has a casting vote only.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, might do. So with that said, I think the very first one that's just ducked off the screen there was Councillor Michael had talked about the Hewitt Shared Youth Path solar lighting project. I think Megan's giving the indication that we could bring this one in. So this really isn't around the table. This will be, just hang on. So it'll simply be majority. Majority puts it into the list that will go into the recommendation, and the minority will obviously see it out depending on what way it goes. So, Megan, you just had one.
I just wanted to clarify with the Hewitt Shared Use Path lighting, the value that is nominated could be very different to what is actually required once we go out, do the study, community survey, and actually work out what we need.
We're okay with that. That will, what I would say is some of them will be more estimates than others. And as we would quite often do, is we would be looking to manage these projects as part of the broader council budget, rather than trying to sort of manage it to the specific $40,000 at this point. Otherwise, it would require us to do a lot more work than what we need to do at the moment. So, Councillor Simon?
Just to clarify that, so what does the $40,000 do for us? Like that number that you got there, that comes from somewhere. I don't know if that was through the submission or it was that made through council.
The submission didn't have a number of lights. It just had the path And I didn't know if it was one stretch that we'd spoken about earlier, or I've since learnt there's another stretch as well. So it was just an arbitrary figure for, I think, something like five lights.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. So we're going to get sore arms, I think, now. So Hewitt Shared Use Path. So this will be a vote for including it into the recommendation. So beautiful. That's a yes. So we will include ID 11 into the program now. Or sorry, into the recommendation. Freeling Christmas Street Party. Again, I know this has gone round and round. This is going to be one of those ones. If it's not funded here, it may well need to be funded through another program of councils. I think we all agree the value of these parties to the communities and how well they're regarded. Is it in or is it out? So in now. It's Freeling, Lynette. Councillor Lynette, sorry. Fantastic, thank you. So the Freeling Christmas party will be included. The Wasleys bus shelter, I think, correct. So this will be, Councillor Collin, have you got a question?
I just thought, Megan said before that was already in the pipeline. It was being funded from somewhere else. So why?
It was one that was pulled out. It was one that was pulled out. So this will be one to not include.
Yeah.
So we'll be voting on this one to not include this. That's the sentiment that I'm getting because it's, yeah. Okay, so the Wasleys bus shelter. So all those who are happy not to include it through this program because it's funded elsewhere. That's the correct answer. It's a hand up. It is. Thank you. It's the correct. Thank you. So it will be funded elsewhere. The Kapunda Christmas Street Party. We're all keen to fund that. And Councillor Bill is down the end. Fantastic.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because about those street parties, so
yep,
I don't want to fund them through this if you can fund it through something else. But if you can't, so how do I go about this?
No, we've already.
Not necessarily.
Can I just say how I would view this? I would view this as the elected members very clearly signalling to the Freeling Street Party Committee and the Kapunda Street Party Committee that we are 100% committed to those events, and we are committed now. We're not committed on the 13th of December because that's where we were last year, and I think that caused a lot of angst amongst that organising committee. We are now signalling in very early September that there's money there for you to go and run that event appropriately. So ID 55, Sunset at Sepulsfield. So this has been put onto the list because there was a comment that they would like to see this not funded, and I'll say this not funded. But I will ask the question: do we want to fund the Sunset at Sepulsfield event? This is for a yes. I want to fund this event. Sunset at Sepulsfield being funded. So I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Was that a yes, Councillor Michael? No. And Councillor Bill is a no. Okay. I'm.
Out of the events money.
Yep.
This year they're asking for it not to be out of the events money. Is that what you just said?
I'm going to have to deflect to Lorinda on that one.
So as was put up on council's website, that for the Warden Community Project budget that they could include an event submission. So that's why you're seeing event submissions in this.
Has it been through something else? Through the other one?
Because I wasn't sure that any of these events would be supported, I encourage every applicant to put a submission into the current event sponsorship program, which closed off on 25th of August. So I can confirm that I have received applications, but if they're funded, there's a very small bucket of money. It ain't going to cover all of that.
So just to clarify, Lorinda, yeah, because you spoke some numbers before and a number of projects, Was Freeling Christmas Party or Kapunda in your list that can now come out of your list? And would that enable the Sunset at Seppeltsfield to be funded easier? Not a word, but I'll use it. And from that program.
Okay, so in what I received in event sponsorship, 42,500. I can now take out 17,000 from if you fund the events that are on here, but there's still going to be a shortfall in event sponsorship for what's been asked for from other events.
Richard, can I just make a suggestion?
Thank you. Yes.
Why don't we vote on these with the understanding that we will fund the shortfall up to that amount? So in other words, if Lorinda can fund 2,000 and it's 5,000, we'll give 3,000. And so when we do our review in November, we've got some money in hand, and that'll save us getting bogged down in argument.
Yep.
Right now.
Well, I think what will happen is whatever's funded in here, Lorinda will remove from her program and provide a report on all of the projects that were submitted, where the ones that have already been funded from, and then recommending other projects be funded. I think it'll be right. Yep.
So what we'll achieve at the end of this is what we were talking about in our committee meeting on this. That is that we're giving more funding to local events, and that can fund them all to the extent they need, which would be about the first time we've done that.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. So from what I did on that little survey to yes, fund the Sunset at Seppeltsfield, the answer was yes, we will be putting that into the recommendation. The Greenock Christmas Festival, this is for yes, let's fund this event. And I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everyone's in favour. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, the KBA, this is the quarterly business magazine, and I think there was again a sentiment around this to not fund this and to remove from the program. On that basis, I will ask for the vote if everyone is happy to not fund this through this particular program. So this is to not fund the KBA through this. So I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, you can't vote, Carrie. Sorry. I'm seeing 5, 6 people voting for this. So that is to remove that from that draft recommendation. Given the sentiment of the above, I will put the same vote for the Excellence Awards. So if people are happy to not fund the Excellence Awards through this program, I will seek hands to not fund. Thank you very much. That is not funded. Freeling Bus Shelter was the same as the Wasleys Bus Shelter. If everyone is comfortable with that, just some nods around that. Thank you. Biodiversity Corridor, Nitschke Road, Megan's spoken about that already, that there is an opportunity. So this was not recommended to fund. I will look for support for this because I think there is sentiment around this one. So we will fund this from the program, and that is all in favour. I'll take Colin. Was that a Councillor Colin? Sorry.
Yeah. So Nitschke Road, is that the one that goes to Nan?
No, Nitschke Road runs from Seppeltsfield to Rowanfelt Road. I couldn't get the name. Seppeltsfield Road, Rowanfelt Road, in Marananga. Yeah. Thank you for that, Kathy.
The 25 grand is a lot of biodiversity, isn't it?
I'm just going to say yes. I think the answer is yes. That's the number that's been worked up. So it was a 7 people were in favour of that. 8 for you, Councillor Colin. No, that's okay.
So just a question on that, actually, when on review of this, so the 25,000 is for a business case, it's not biodiversity itself, but to inform. Is that right? Or no, I'm misreading it. Oh, it is to do the work.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Megan. So that biodiversity project will be included in the recommendation. we haven't spoken about this, but the character preservation workshops, Marinanga and Seppeltsfield. I was going to nearly say Councillor Craig then, but that would be very wrong. Craig, would you just like to make a comment on this in relation to the process around these?
Yeah, thanks through the chair. Look, I provided a summary in relation to, or comment at least on the summary in relation to this. Really, that was built around just having some awareness from the Planning Commission about how this might be brought in when the code amendment component is advanced. The reason I've done that is that only certain parts of the code are allowed to have these types of character statements, which are envisaged. So the idea behind this was to have consultation with the communities to develop character statements, which would become part of the policy that would be brought in. And I was just suggesting that we first seek confirmation from the Commission that that's something that we're going to be able to do, so that we are tempering or aligning expectation with what we can deliver. So I think it's a good exercise, provided we're able to do it in the code amendment.
On that basis, Craig.
On that basis, I indicated within the commentary that we would try to include it within the project funding that we've already allocated, the 20,000.
Perfect.
If we can, if it's going to be an additional cost, provided we're able to do it, I'll bring that back to council was my idea.
So bottom line is this is funded elsewhere in council already and will be included as part of its program, I think we're hearing. So the suggestion here would be to that we don't need to fund this because it's funded elsewhere. So if people are comfortable with that, okay, so this will be a no. So this no, we're not funding this because it's funded elsewhere. Comfortable? Everyone's comfortable? Yep, everyone understands. Thank you. Comfortable with that. Okay, the last one we've got is ID 68, the community engagement improvement, and we have Kimberly who can just give a bit of background on that one.
The reason this one wasn't included in the original recommendation from administration is because the costing can't be verified at this point in time. The vendor who supplies the software for Have Your Say has been recently taken over by a larger vendor. So we're at the process of needing to scope out the actual costs. And the proposal was that we would bring it back either this financial year or the next financial year once we've got everything understood of the full scoping to then put it as a business case to council to put through.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. And that's depending on the cost. I mean, if it's a lower cost, we would be in a position where it would be funded through our other areas of council already, and we would implement this. We think it's a great idea. But I think at this point in time, we would say not funded through this program.
Just a point, Richard. Programs like this that we're saying can be probably funded from another source. Will the applicants get to know that? We'll be writing to them and
I
explaining
think
that.
they're probably hearing it firsthand right now.
No, but there's been other ones as well. I'm just covering your back.
Yes.
That's all.
It will be. Yes, thank you, Karen. So I'll just put that one to the vote in terms of understanding that we won't be funding it through the program because it's being dealt with by our internal program at council. So that's going to be a no for this one. So everyone comfortable with the no? Yep, I'm seeing the nods. Okay, so that's a no. Thank you.
Can I ask one question about that still?
Yes.
So one thing that I've noticed is we have implemented a QR code. So we already have a mailing list now of everyone that's interested to receive notifications if we do community engagement or if there's any media release or any of that. So that's already part of that is I suppose it's already done, isn't it? To a certain degree.
What I would say is that more our systems are okay, but having dedicated systems like this one put much greater structure around and ability to report than what our current ones do.
That's right. So I just wanted to follow on from that. So we do have a mailing list now, which we didn't have. So at this point, we do have a mailing list, which is a great thing. So I'm just wondering, is it a way that we can say we do want this money ready to be spent, or do whenever that program is ready to be purchased or implemented, or do you saying that is already there anyway?
We're already working our way on this one.
I know, but the funding is because I heard from Kimberly saying that we need to work up a business case for next year and then include it in the budget. So therefore, there's another extra step saying we need to make the money ready to then do it. Could we already speak that money now for?
My view is that until we know the cost, it's hard to say. What we find with a lot of these programs is the software cost is not the cost, it's actually the implementation. And so this is a great idea. Like, all I can say is that the engagement that we did this year was a bit awkward and cumbersome, and having programs that are better positioned to do it is the way to go. Thank you very much for that. What we're going to do is we're just going to need a minute or two to convert this into what would be the recommendation and the dollar figure. And I think Kyron's going to do an audit on it by the look of this. And then we would be in a position where we're able to put a recommendation. But ahead of that, there is a recommendation in your agenda that has a couple of parts, and it's probably the second, I think the second and third parts you can have a look at the moment. Thank you, elected members. I think we've got a number now that's going to be pretty close. That Corey's going to bring onto the screen. I think the number from memory is around about 352,500, which leaves whatever that works out to, 338,500, which on my recollection, Councillor Michael's probably 12% or something silly like that, which seems a reasonable contingency, maybe not for a cost estimator these days, but I'm okay with that number. So we're trying to do some formatting, but at this point, I think I might hand back over to Mayor Beale, who
Can I
can.
just ask one question first? I looked at the figures we had up there, the ins and outs, and according to my calculation, it was $1,000 difference. Other was the ins and outs were.
Look, we could play bingo on this one because that side of the room thought about 330. You're saying about in the 306 to 10 range. We're thinking, but look, at the end of the day, it will. The numbers are all of that will get sorted out in the budget review. So. Oh, she gives away our secrets all the time. Thank you very much. So there is now everything that we've just workshopped has now been put into the recommendation. So I'll leave it with Mayor Beale, and I'm not sure, Mayor Beale, if you need to resume.
We'll have to resume our normal meeting. I don't know if I need a mover and seconder for that. Show of hands, councillors. Well, that's unanimous. Well, we're back into our ordinary meeting procedures, and we'll start with our 3.1, have your say future community board projects finalisation. I guess we don't need to discuss this any further. We've probably been down that track pretty well, and I must say I commend everyone around the table for the valuable input tonight and the fact that we've been able to come to some conclusions. But we do have a recommendation beginning on page 4 and flipping over to page 5. We have 3 recommendations, 1, 2 and 3. And the first one is to endorse the following projects of funding under the 23-24 Your Say, Your Future initiative. And then we have second part of the recommendation, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to notify applicants of the endorsed 2023-2024 Your Say, Your Future projects, where partnerships delivery is to occur, execute agreements with delivery partners with appropriate terms and conditions to ensure the intended community outcomes are achieved, acknowledge the alternative project implementation pathways identified for projects not endorsed for funding under the 2023-24 Your Say, Your Future initiative, and give these considerations to these as part of a future strategic planning process. I think that's an excellent series of recommendations on the basis that seems to cover everything that we've talked about tonight. And there's none of these projects will slip through the keeper. I think they're all been identified and they've all got an opportunity to be followed through in various ways that we do in strategic plan, 4-year strategic plan, 10-year strategic plan that's coming up shortly, and other methods that may be programs that are already available. So having said that, the 3 recommendations there, do I have anyone to move? Councillor Dean and Councillor Michael. Any comments, councillors? Any further questions?
Yep, just a slight typo on point 2, 2023/224. Should that just be 24?
Oh, yes. Good pickup. Well done. A little alteration.
On the second point of the recommendation. Yep. First line right at the end.
there's in the recommendation, I thought you were talking about that, councillor Fabio, in the recommendation, the note 2, it says 2023/224, we're missing an O.
That then.
That was it, was it? Thanks, yeah. Great pick up, both of us. Well, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried, and I must say I'm a very proud mayor sitting here. I think that's a fantastic exercise tonight, and I really sincerely thank Richard for preparation and his staff that prepared the detail, and I couldn't like to count the number of hours that have been probably put into this particular project to get us to this stage. I think we've got something to really work on for the future now. We've got the model. We know with discussions tonight that we need to tweak that a bit. It's not wholesale slaughter though. I think we're pretty well on the money. We just got to adjust a few of the framework around it, and we're off to go next time. But and I think we'll get a lot more application to this as well. But what a great feeling it is now to be able to send this message out to our communities, where they can start to plan their future and plan these projects that they've asked us to support. It's a great thing, and and it makes me feel very, very happy to be part of this council. I thought tonight's discussion also was excellent. I owe Colin an apology, I must say. I was a bit sharp to start with. I didn't mean that. Yeah, I was a bit sharp, and I apologise for that. But I was a bit nervous tonight because I thought this is so important to us. And oh well, I better not close the meeting, had I? Councillor Ross or Councillor Collin has a motion without notice. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I've just got a motion on notice. It's I think we've all been sent correspondence about some trees in the Centennial Park. So we've had a correspondence from a resident who's concerned, plus we've had the park committee have spoken to me and others. So I think I'd like a report to be supplied for the next meeting, and I've got a motion that suggests that. Do I have to read it out, do I? Or? So the council request the CEO or his delegates to provide a report to the September ordinary meeting of council detailing the situation that was given rise to the need for the removal of a selection of sugar gums from the Greenock Centenary Park.
Is everyone comfortable with that? Do you understand what that means? Mr. Michael, you prepared to second that? Everyone comfortable with the wording and
No,
what it means?
that.
Who? Oh, that. Oh, gee, you make a good wicket keeper.
Oh,
I'll put the motion if there's no further discussion or questions. Comfortable with that, Councillor Collin?
No, well, yeah, with their bill the other day, it's been a bit of a wart on the whole Greenock town, and I think they wanted a bit of direction from us. So I think a good report. If we get a report, then we can maybe put it to bed and give some leadership. That's all I think we need to do.
I think you're right, and it's unfortunately we're in a very awkward situation with this. We have commissioned the Greenock Centenary Park to manage that facility, and we pay them to do that, and they've done it wonderfully well for 30 odd years. So they make a decision, and we, technically speaking, as a council, really should be obliged to support that. Nevertheless, there's been an argument on the other side, which can be from the wider community, that maybe that decision shouldn't lie as is. So we need to see what evidence there is about on both sides and weigh it up. So I think it's a very timely recommendation or motion, pardon me, Councillor Collin, because we do need to put this to bed. It's been going on for a long, long time. I think Mickey Sluter said to me something like 3 years maybe that there's been talk about this, maybe even longer. So I think it's up to us as a progressive council and a wide-thinking council to knock it in the head one way or the other and let people get on with their lives. No, oh, yes, we did.
No.
Oh, we haven't. Oh,
Got a mover and a second.
all those in favour. That's unanimous. That's an excellent call. Thanks, councillors, and thanks, councillor Collins, for raising it because it is timely. We'll all get phone calls and we'll all be part of it. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks for being here. Cheerio. Well, I don't think I have too much more to say except that thank you once again. And the spirit of tonight's meeting was excellent. And I think the respect shown around was great. And I think we all learned a lot about what's out there. And there's a lot. So with that, I'll close the meeting and look forward to seeing you in the September meeting. Thanks, everybody.